have something else to talk about now. Don't worry, it's still Michael Jackson. Y'all, I saw MJ the musical, and I have thoughts to share. So, I bought tickets to MJ the musical months before it even came to my city because I had known about it for quite some time, missed it when it was in Chicago, and so I decided, you know what, it's coming to Indy, gotta go. And then I just sort of put it out of my mind. I went in completely blind. No clips, no bootlegs, no deep dives, nothing, which is honestly kind of weird for me, although it does appear that I'm more of a after the fact kind of processor anyway, but still. I thought the lack of expectations would honestly serve me well going in, and I still was not prepared for what I experienced. Because what I really didn't expect was to leave the show and immediately go to buy tickets for that same weekend to see it again before it left town. Also, quick warning, there will be spoilers in this video. Alright, so what exactly is MJ the musical? Let me tell you. Let me tell you. This show was created by Lynn Nottage and directed and choreographed by Christopher Wheeldon. The show premiered on Broadway in 2021 and went on to win multiple Tony Awards, including Best Actor for first-time Broadway star Miles Frost. And I use that word star intentionally because hot damn, our boy was working. I've seen the footage. Structurally, technically, this is a jukebox musical. So it pulls from Michael Jackson's existing catalog instead of creating original songs, which thank God. But what makes this interesting is how they choose to tell the story, utilizing this catalog. The entire show is framed around the rehearsals for the Dangerous World Tour in 1992. So instead of a straightforward biography, we're watching Michael reflect on his life through the lens of preparing for one of his biggest tours. They do this by using a plot device of someone from MTV coming in and interviewing Michael throughout the process. That framing allows the show to jump around to different timelines. So we go from his childhood in the Jackson 5 era, his rise as a solo artist, his present day 92 pressures, things like that. And yes, I feel like I need to state that the Michael Jackson estate is involved in the production of the show, which is important context when we think about tone, storytelling choices, and what is or isn't emphasized. I know there's a lot of commentary and critique over those things, but we'll get into a little bit of that later. The show has also expanded beyond Broadway with a West End production in London and also a US national tour, which is what I saw back in January. So let's talk about my first viewing experience because as I mentioned before, your girl went twice. Going in, I kept my expectations pretty chill. I figured at minimum I'd get a good time. Good music, obviously, some nostalgia, hopefully some solid dancing. But I'll be honest, I was a little bit concerned about one thing. You can't just do Michael Jackson numbers for the sake of putting on a show. The fans will eat you alive, myself included. But right away, there was this overwhelming feeling of joy and nostalgia that I got, which was honestly a relief. I was glad I was in the mindset and the headspace to just enjoy this for what it was. There's a reverence in the show that I was able to feel immediately, and I really appreciated that as a fan. It seemed like it wanted you to understand why his artistry mattered, and that is a solid goal of any sort of creative work about or around his life, in my opinion. Some other immediate takeaways, though, were that the ensemble dancers were not quite giving it to me out the gate the way that I would have expected or wanted. Technically, they were strong, but there was something missing in the sharpness, precision, the quality of the movement, and I kept thinking, like, these are supposed to be Michael Jackson's dancers for Dangerous, the world tour. The man was famously a perfectionist, and they were wonderful. And it also hurts me to even critique because I am a dancer myself. I know how incredibly hard it is to perform and project so people in the back of the back can feel your energy, but I also know that MJ expected nothing but excellence in that regard. So you gotta come out swinging for me, and unfortunately they just didn't, at least at first. That doesn't mean the choreo wasn't okay, though. I don't know. I had some different feelings about especially Act 1 choreography, but I was still locked in because we weren't trying to redo any sort of iconic choreo either, which I think was a good choice all in all. Now, Michael himself, that is a different story. I was extremely impressed. The principal actor for MJ in the production that I saw the first night was Jordan Marcus. Baby boy wasn't playing. And I actually found out later more about how they train these performers because there's a reason that it feels so convincing. So a little backstory on how that works. Rich and Tone Talawega? I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. Talawega? I don't know. Rich and Tone are behind the movement we see for MJ in this show. They have very impressive and extensive backgrounds in the dance community, and one of their most impressive bullet points on their resume is their connection to Michael, having worked closely with him during tours like History. This gives them a unique authority. They're not reconstructing from footage, they're teaching from lived experience. They then became the invisible architects of sorts behind the movement language of the musical, translating the essence of Michael Jackson into a living, teachable system for a new generation of performers. And that's dope. I also thought it was interesting and appreciated that rather than simply recreating iconic choreography as we talked about before, the brothers serve as cultural translators in a way, and working with Christopher Wheeldon, a British white dude, I believe, embedding authenticity into every choice. At the center of this process is what the show materials and interviews describe as MJ Boot Camp, which is an intensive training philosophy that goes beyond just movements and steps into psychology, musicality, and intention. Drawing on their firsthand experience with Jackson, Rich and Tone emphasize that his movement cannot be learned through imitation alone. It must be rebuilt from the inside out. I love that shit. As they've described, they aim to pass on knowledge you can't read and wisdom you can't learn, framing choreography as embodied memory rather than choreography as notation. And that's on human connection to dance and movement as a means by which we, especially those of African descent, connect with our ancestors. But that was a whole different conversation. Of note, feeling a great respect for having learned this after the fact, I of course wanted to know if Rich and Tone were a part of the Michael biopic. Did Jafar go through MJ Boot Camp? And the short answer is yes. Moving on, another thing that I absolutely loved were the homages. There are literal moments in which we follow Michael through dancing with some of his biggest influences like James Brown, Fred Astaire, and the Nicholas brothers. And honestly, while there were a small reference or two, I found it kind of surprising that there wasn't more of an emphasis on Bob Fosse's influence on Michael, especially considering this is literally a Broadway show, but I digress. So there were a few moments that really stuck with me the first time around. The Thriller era montage was one of them. It was so well done. It felt like I was time traveling through some of the biggest moments in pop culture history because of the incredible set work, how they utilized the music and costuming, lighting, etc., even from nosebleed seats. It was pretty immersive, and I love an artistic experience that does that. One of the biggest emotional hits for me was I'll Be There. The way they tied this song into the relationship between Michael and his mother, using adult Michael as both narrator and participant in the memory. It's hard to explain, but oh my goodness. Having him replace little Michael in that moment as Joseph drags him away for another late night rehearsal, that got me. It's not just like a, oh, mother-son moment. It taps into something deeper. And from everything that I've been learning about Michael recently, relearning, there is this recurring theme. He's always longed to feel safe, but he was taught since he could remember that that is not a given in life. And Catherine was often that safety for him, especially in his younger years. And as a mom myself, especially now that I have a son, ooh, that moment just hit on a completely different level, and their harmonies broke my soul all the way down and put it back together. Then it was time to jump back into 1992 like nothing happened, and that was honestly pretty rude, but you know, it's musical. Another standout for me was Stranger in Moscow. If you're here, there's a chance that you're a diehard fan, but you could also be getting into Michael as a newer listener, or even more likely, you could be one of my very sweet friends who agreed to humor me and watch my videos. So I don't want to assume anything, but Stranger in Moscow is considered to be a pretty deep cut still in Jackson's discography, and a criminally underrated one at that. The story behind how and when the song was written and even produced is also very key in understanding Michael's post-Quincy trilogy career. The fact that they highlighted this one as one of the very few, if not the only, solo songs for MJ with no dancers, no stage band, no lights, just him, I think allowed for the intention of this song to shine in ways that it honestly hasn't as a track on History, Past, Present, and Future Book 1, or even the video, as much as I do love the video. This moment also had a very notable impact on both of the people I took with me at the separate viewings. They had not previously given the song that much thought, and after the performance, it became favorites of theirs, actually. Alright, so the next standout moment that I gotta talk about is Thriller. Yeah, just the song, Thriller. Guys, why the fuck was I sobbing in public during Thriller? In my 33 years, I have never had an emotional reaction other than just pure jubilation to that song. But the way that they reimagine it for this show with almost like a circus-like horror aesthetic, especially the way that they portrayed Joseph Jackson as this terrifying and looming figure, reframes everything that I thought that I knew about that song. And the way it's placed within the timeline of the musical is just, I don't know, it's just insane, and I was not ready for it, and I could not control my tears tears. And that's on the power part. And that's all I'm gonna say about that, because it's like low-key embarrassing how much I was crying. I also feel like it's important to say that I clearly left the theater on an insane high. I felt connected to my ancestors, y'all. I had so many feelings. I started voice noting my best friend, and I'm like, you know what?
I don't know. I feel crazy. And that's what good art does, I guess. I think there's a reason I feel validated in my obsession with this man and his lineage and his journey and his trauma and his connection to me and my music, no, not my music, his music to me, through me, in me. If and when we are able to see this week together, because it's very important to me. Like, I will pay, I don't care. I'm going to take out a loan. We're doing it because it's just so good. I want to share it with you. So, in short, let me know your availability, queen. Just let me know, because I have a lot of feelings, clearly, and I am going to need to have a whole therapy session about this, and also need to see it again. And I will not be stopped. I don't care. I'll go by my damn self. But I do believe that if you are available, that you will go with me. And I love you, and I will stop now. Goodbye.
So that was that. So yeah, needless to say, my best friend there was like, yeah, okay, Jesus Christ, we'll go. And we did. So going a second time, I was watching it a little bit differently. I wasn't just reacting as much as I was analyzing. And one thing that really stood out to me is how theatrical Michael already was as a person. His artistry, his mindset, and even the way he processed the world, it all lends itself to the stage way more naturally than I expected or had thought about, I guess. There were differences though this time. So this was a matinee, and you could tell that the dancers were definitely conserving their energy a bit more, which is understandable, but like, I also saw an understudy for MJ, which changed some dynamics, but it was still really solid. Interestingly enough, all that being said, I did have more of an appreciation for the ensemble the second time around, because this cast works nonstop. It is a very, very small cast. The ensemble members are constantly switching roles throughout timelines and things of that nature. They're going from 1992 backup dancers to a member of the Jackson 5 in a matter of minutes or even seconds at times. The costume changes, wild. I also really appreciated and noticed that they are intentional about having a live band on stage throughout the rehearsal scenes, which adds a layer of realism and authenticity to the atmosphere they're trying to create. It's a demanding ass show, let's just put it that way. But I still feel like excellence in every regard when we're putting on a show about MJ should definitely be a non-negotiable, and I had some qualms about that. Did I not buy another ticket though? Clearly I did. So, does this show succeed at being authentic or even good? I would say mostly, yeah. There were far more moments where I felt warmth and respect as a fan than moments where I didn't, but I also didn't feel like they were sugarcoating things that they didn't need to. It felt like the show was genuinely trying to honor Michael, his artistry, his story, his impact, and in a way that works for theater. Is it perfect? No, but it worked way more than I expected it to. One of the clearest through lines of the show is this idea of demons. You see it in his relationship with authority figures, you see it in the pressures of fame, you see it in hints of things like pain management and control, and there's also a really effective choice where the same actor plays both his father and his present-day manager, which reinforces the idea of recurring control and pressure in his life. The way they commit to pulling this off is why I love theater. So here's the elephant in the room that everybody wants to talk about, and it is where I'm going to push back. A common criticism of this show is that it avoids controversy, and I don't fully agree with that. First of all, the show is set in 1992 during the Dangerous World Tour rehearsals. The allegations that people are definitely referring to when they say that they avoid controversy in this show did not emerge until 1993, August to be exact. So structurally, it wouldn't even make sense for that to be the central focus or a focus at all, to be honest. Secondly, they do acknowledge it. There are moments where the media and public perception creep in, including a press conference scene during They Don't Care About Us, where the question is literally shouted, "What about the allegations?" My biggest question here is, what are people really wanting with a musical going experience? Like, would we really think it appropriate to have that storyline be the theme here? Did we want an entire new original number on like, did I do bad things to children? Come on. I'm obviously not saying these things need to be sugarcoated, left out, whatever you want to call it. Blech. MJ was and is a complicated figure, a complicated man that made some questionable choices, especially without context, that did not help his case when these unfortunate accusations came his way. But y'all really wanted show tunes about alleged pedophilia? That's weird, bro. At the end of the day, MJ the Musical surprised me because it made me feel something I genuinely did not expect going into it. And for now, that's good enough for me. Let me know in the comments if y'all have seen it, what your thoughts are, and as I'm sure you can guess, I'll be back within the month to discuss a little project that's coming out. And I'm fine, thanks for asking. Okay, bye!